So last week I was talking about my little boards and connecting them together and trying to get my master and slave to talk over a UART. And then if I add my radio board, I want to be able to talk to that one over a UART. And it comes back to the question, how do you power all this stuff? And Terry asked one time, can you power it externally and still use USB? And I said, maybe. Well, when I started digging into this, it turns out all these small boards are so cheap, they did not put a diode between the USB connector and the board itself. So that causes problems. So I agonized over this for quite a while. And then I'll show you some things that I came up with here. And so on the top diagram here, this is where I first started out. And I'm just showing, here's my master processor, here's my slave processor, and here's my LORA radio board. And I was trying to think, if I power everything from this external 5-volt supply here, that gives me 5 volts and ground on all the boards. And the thing is, if I were to, and to skip ahead, here's a concept down here. If you take a USB cable and strip off the insulation and cut the power wire inside of it, then that will isolate your USB port on your main computer from the 5 volts on your thing down here. So I could make up some cables like that, either just cut the wire, or cut the wire and put a diode in there, depending what you're trying to get out of this. If you don't want it to talk to it at all, just cut the wire and don't put the diode in. But that means you have to go hack up cables in order to do that. So come back up to this
I
concept. What's that?
I think I know you can get power only cables, so you don't have to hack anything up. And I think dollar store, one of those dollar things,
Yeah,
had some a couple of weeks ago.
the Dollar Tree has various cables, and some of them are too cheap. Every once in a while, I plug one in and it doesn't work, and I don't know why. So I just put in a better cable and it works. But back to the concept, yes, I could get a power only one, but the whole point is I don't want it to power it through that cable. So that's why you take a normal
Got it.
cable and cut the power, and that way you can still talk to it. This would be my main communication in this case, back to my ROS computer. But I want to cut the power so it doesn't screw up doesn't blow up the USB port on my main computer. And then
Got it.
also that means from the external supply, I can get this to power all the boards from this thing. But you still have to be careful. You have to remember that don't plug a regular cable into one of these, because that could destroy something if you do that. So that's not the best solution. So another thing I thought of, you can go to SparkFun and buy their little breakout board that's got a USB connector on a board. And that's all it is. So I take one of those and wire it up to my master board, because it just had the USB pins also come out on 2 of the IO pins. So I could wire that up and just don't hook up the power lead there. And by doing that, I wouldn't have to hack up the USB cable. So that might be a way that I could do that. So I thought about it some more and thought, well, if I just power everything through the USB ports. So I got three boards here and have USB cables. So the one coming from the main computer would give me my communication, but then I want to cut the wire in it and then use this external supply here. So I just take cables, USB cables, and cut them off and wire them to this supply. So this one and this one would be done that way. And to keep everything isolated, if I put a diode, I don't have to cut the cable and put a diode just on this board. I could have my power supply and 3 diodes coming out. And then it shows the middle one here comes out. I could just run a wire and connect it here, because the diode would be back here on the supply. And then these, where I show a diode on the cable, I don't really need that. The diode could be inside of here. And I'm not really sure that I have to have the diodes in there. And when I get to the next diagram, I've taken the diodes out. But I thought, well, this would work, and it would allow me to talk to this USB port from my ROS computer. And then theoretically, if this is powered up, say if I don't have this diode here, that means when this is plugged in, this will not power any of the boards. But if I have this powered up and a USB cable, either with a diode or just a cut wire, then I could still program through that. And if I want to program the other boards, then I can unplug this cable and plug in one of the modified cables to program that board. And likewise on the LORA board, I could do that also. So I thought, well, that might be a way to go. But then the more I thought about it, came up with a couple other concepts that this one, let's see on the top here, like Terry wants to use a UART to do his main communication. So I could add a FTDI adapter. So I've got one of these. In fact, I've got various models of this type of thing. It's just an FTDI adapter. So it's got USB on one end, and then it's got the just the IO pins on the other end. So I could put one of those and just don't connect the power between those two. So that means my ROS computer would power up this and keep the link powered up all the time, and it would stay there all the time. So if I hit the reset button here or turn off the supply or whatever, I don't lose my connection, which is always real annoying. So that would be another nice feature to have. So this way I thought, well, if I just put all these boards in parallel on a 5-volt supply with not putting any isolation in there, when I turn this on, it will power up all the boards. And then again, I would communicate over this ROS USB cord here. That this is not a modified cable. It's just, you just plug the cable in, it powers the FTDI board and keeps that link available. And but I don't connect the 5 volts from here to here, so I don't have a problem with it screwing anything up. And then the more I thought about it, it might be best just to go with this method and just simply get just standard USB cables from each board out to a powered USB hub. So I just put my power into the hub, and then that should isolate the cable that goes back to my ROS computer. And that, with the least amount of screwing around, with the least amount of tedious screwing around, this should allow it to power up all the boards. I can then talk to any of the boards from my ROS computer. And this gives me the advantage that if I, at any point, like Al says, he didn't want to tear his computer apart to reprogram a board. So this allows me, as long as I know what the port's called, how the port is identified, I can fire up Arduino or Platform IO and say, go out to this address and program, whichever board I want to in circuit without taking anything apart. So this may be the best way to go right here. This whole diagram right here. And I do have a question. I'm thinking on Arduino, if you use a UDEV rule to rename the port, say if I call it Blue Pill Master, so it'd be this board right here. So if I plug it in, it might come up as ACM0 or ACM3 or whatever it is, but the UDEV rule would call it F103 Master. I don't know if that shows up in Arduino. I don't think it does, but I think in Platform IO, you got that configuration file. I think in there you could probably put in the name. So you'd say F103 Master as opposed to whatever the other numbers are. So if I'm doing it with Arduino, I might have a problem trying to get that to identify the correct board out there.
But you'd be able to select what port, right?
Well,
and
you can,
then,
but I don't know if it understands the UDEV rules. It may not know that I have something called that.
Right, but you can always have it query to determine what processor is on there.
Possibly.
I don't know what shows up in Arduino when you have a USB hub connected. That's not something I've ever tried.
Well, it doesn't care about the USB hub. It's just when you plug in each device, it's assigned a number. So the first one you plug in will be ACM0, whether you have a hub or not. The second will be ACM1. Next one will be ACM3. But the point is, under Arduino, yeah, you could go out and say pick ACM0, and as Terry says, go out and tell me what's on there. If I wanted to, I could go look at my my D message or what is it, LUSB command. And because these particular boards, they actually use say if you plug in this Blue Pill board, it's actually using the ST micro serial number in the chip. So these do all have unique IDs. So I could tell which one it is. And when I plug in the Adafruit board, I don't know what it's going to do, but that might be ways to get around all this stuff. So that's more stuff I'll just have to look into when I get that far and see what happens. So anyway, this would allow me to power everything from the USB hub, and then just plug that into my computer, and everybody should be happy, except I might have a problem trying to figure out, which board am I talking to. So that's pretty much what I did this week, was just try to figure all this stuff out. And other things I was trying to think of. Oh, there's one more issue. All of these boards have, you see on the end of the board, it's got these 4 pins to run the little debug adapter, so you can plug that in. And this has on the end of the cable, you've got ground and 3.3 and then 2 data lines. So again, so you don't have problems, just don't plug in the 3.3 volt line between these two. So again, the board would have to be powered up through the hub, and keep everybody happy. And then when coming in this end, I would plug down here, I'd plug in the wires coming in this end down here into the board, and just don't hook up the 3.3 volts there. So again, I don't think I would have conflicts with my power. And it could be I'm going to come up with more problems as I think about this or actually try it. I just don't want to have any surprises and plug something in and have everything blow up. I especially don't want to blow up a laptop. So that's why I need to give enough thought to that. And the other thing I was thinking about, if I put my stuff onto, let's do this. So I got a perf board here, and so here's my radio board. Let's see, it might fit that direction. Then I put a relay on there because I need a relay as part of my eStop circuit. So basically, I could just build up a little module like this, and then just have a connector that has whatever pins I need would go to my master processor. So my master might be on. I'd probably have to go on a bigger board. I want a master like that. Put the processor on there. And this might be where my 5-volt power supply goes, or maybe I could put it on the same size. Let's see, will that fit on there? I don't think it will fit that direction. If I put it this direction, I might be able to get it to fit that way and still have room for connectors over here. So basically put each one of my processors on a separate little module and just hook them together with cables might be a reasonable way to go. And that also gives me the advantage when I want to swap out the master for either the blue pill or here's the black pill board. You know, I could have separate modules to do that and just plug in, as long as I just have connectors between the boards. I should just be able to unplug one and plug the other one in and make that work. So that was the other thing I was thinking about. And going back to my SAMI 2, I had my electronics box, and I put inside of that, I put that big 30 amp driver board, that Cytron driver board. I started off with 2 of those inside of there because I was going to drive, one of those was going to be driving my power steering stuff. Before I switched to the RC servo, I was going to do that. And after I decided to go to the RC servo, I took that board out of that box. But I kept thinking it'd be better to put that board closer to the motor for various reasons. One, you'd have shorter power leads for the motor, and you could isolate it, a better isolation to the battery, and it just simply, and then it's not taking up all the room in your electronics box. So I was thinking this time I've got the smaller, I think it's a 10 amp Cytron driver board. It's either 10 or 13 amp single channel board. I could put that in a little plastic box and put that down by the motors and just run the control lines back to my box that would have my master microcontroller in it. So that's just more things I was trying to think about. You know, what did I learn from my last one, and what would be a better way to lay this stuff out? So that, again, that's pretty much what I've been thinking about here the last few days. So let's go back to this view, turn this off, go back to this camera, put on a nice soothing background here. So I guess that's all I had to say. I'll turn it over to somebody else now.
You had line arrows pointed between your 3 boards. What were you, what do you think is?
Those are the communication interfaces. So the master to the slave is going to be a UART. It's going to be UART2 on each board connected together. And that's how they talk back and forth to send commands down to the slave or get information back from the slave. And then for the LORA radio, I was going to put a UART between that and the master controller. So that's what those lines going back and forth are on that.
Cool. And any thought to which USB hub? Have you done any research on USB hubs?
I had a little, what they called a laptop USB, you know, so it's just a little tiny one you could put in your bag, you carry it around. And I was having problems with that. And I went and bought a bigger one that's closer. It looks closer to the one you've got. And that one seemed to fix my electrical problems. And I think that one can be powered. So either I'd use a big one like that, or try to find another one of the smaller, what they call the laptop ones. That's because I need either 3 or 4 port hub, depending on what I'm trying to do. And it's just a matter of I'll have to try one and see if it's going to work and verify that. Because I know if you got a powered hub and you don't power it, it still works. But I'm thinking that it's just, then your main computer is powering everything downstream. So if you plug in the cable, say if I got one that wants 5 volts, if I plug in the cable, is there a switch on that connector so it will isolate the stuff from coming from the computer or not? So I'll have to look in that too and see what that does, because I don't want a situation where if I forget to power off the 5 volts, I don't want my laptop or Raspberry Pi or whatever powering all that downstream stuff. I'd rather have it just say, no, I'm not going to work until you apply power somewhere.
Yeah, the one that I'm using, it takes 12 volt input, I think 2 amps or something, maybe more, because it has some ports on it that are power only ports. And although it's been great for me, it's a bit bulky. Another benefit to it is it has on off buttons, both power and data for each of the individual ports. So if I just want to reboot a board, I can basically do that by hitting that button. I'll take a picture of another USB hub that I bought. It's in my archives somewhere that was just a raw board made, you could imagine it going inside a box. And I've forgotten now where I got it, but maybe if I take a picture of it, I'll be able to figure that out and send it to you. And it had 4 ports, I think. It was little, basically the size of maybe 2 decks of cards square.
I was going to suggest going with the 4, even though you need 3 right now, but you never know when you're going to need that one extra port.
Well, if I add the FTDI connector and to talk to it over a UART, I will need a 4th port to do that. So that would be, yeah, that's what I was thinking, that, typically four ports is typically the smallest they come. You either get 4 or 5, and then it goes up from there. I think it jumps up to 7 or 8 or something from there. It goes 4 or 5 or 7, I think is what you get when you buy them. But there's thousands of them out there, so it's just a matter of picking one and see if it works, I guess.
Terry, do you want to go or you want me to go?
Sure, I can go. Been having a lot of problems with my Windows laptop. It seems to crash about 2 or 3 times a day. So I'm learning to save frequently and often, and I still end up having to make sure I bookmark everything on the browser so that it doesn't lose those. So I've also started looking at what do I want in my next laptop, because this one I think is about 6 years old. And I'm thinking a minimum of 16 gig memory, minimum 512 gig storage. I want the numeric keypad, but the one I was looking at only had 2 USB ports. And so I was looking at one of those powered port expanders, and I saw a 7. It's probably the same one, Al, you're looking at, because it had a power switch for each port. 2 of them are power only ports. So there's 5 communication ports and then 2 powered only ports for charging, which for what I'm wanting to do is perfect. And so that was the one thing I've done. Let me get.
Before I go too much farther here, I was going to point out that you may want to get a solid state drive as opposed to a physical drive.
Yep.
Because I noticed my main computer has a physical drive, and it just bogs down and it is a problem. And people say, because I got another one that's got a solid state drive that I put in myself, and it boots up, with like 30 seconds. My other one takes like 2 minutes to boot up, and it just has problems as it goes. Then the other thing was, you say you're having all these problems. Back in the old days, you could go into Windows and say, do a Windows recovery or a Windows repair or something, and it would reload enough stuff that sometimes that would fix all your problems. So you might want to go through and back up anything you got on it, and then you could experiment like that. If you had to, just possibly reloading Windows from scratch would fix all your problems. But because over time you load various drivers and they start conflicting and whatever, so that if you don't really want to buy a new computer right now, you might want to give that a shot first.
Well, my wife has her company gives her X amount of dollars every year for business expenses, and they'll pay 75% of a new computer. And I think we're due for a new computer, and she does not need a new computer, but I do. So
Yeah.
It'll save me a lot of hassle getting a computer now rather than waiting till the end of the year and figuring out, okay, how do I spend this excess money? Because it's like $3,500 she gets every year. So, but yeah, the laptop I've got now has a 256 solid state drive, but then it had a port for another drive. So I've got the 256 and then I think a 750 regular hard drive in it that I basically just took from my previous laptop. So everything that was on my old one, I brought over to here and then just got rid of the OS files. But the all of the ones I'm looking at now don't have an excess hard drive port. But I can always do I've got a number of externals.
Well, I noticed on my laptop, another thing you might want to look at, and maybe you don't have any choice anymore, but the old ones, you could just flip a little latch on the back and open up, get to the hard drive and the memory and everything. And now the modern ones, they actually snap it together, and you have to actually go through and physically rip all the little snaps apart to get the back off the thing. So if you can find a way you don't have to do that, you'd be better off. What was the other thing? Oh, on mine, when I opened mine up to do something to it, I realized it does have the little what they call the M2 connector or whatever for a solid state drive, and nowhere does it say that it has that, in the specs or the any bragging about the computer. They don't say that's in there. When I open it up, there is a connector inside, so theoretically I do have the ability to plug in another one of those small solid state drives into that. And you're saying the ones you're looking at don't have that. Well, it could be it's like mine, it has it, they just don't bother to tell you about it. So you might
well, there's no place internal to inside the computer to have the second drive. Whereas on the laptop that I've got now, there's actually a bay for putting it in.
Well, mine with that little connector, you don't need any room. It just goes over the top of everything. So mine's got a physical drive, either a real drive or solid state drive, but then it's got this extra connector they didn't tell me about that I can just get one of those things and stick in there and screw it down. It takes one screw at the end. And so again, it may be there and they're just not telling you that it's there. I don't know why they wouldn't tell me, but.
And I'm debating about whether to expand to 32 gig on the memory. Can never have too much memory.
Well, I don't know about that, but it could be these days. Yeah, you can't have too much, but.
But it's got like 10 cores. I hadn't heard of that one before, but there were a couple of them that had like 10, 12, and 14 cores. So it was interesting. But let's see, where was I going to go on this? But related to robots, I started going through a bunch of tutorials and working with the Turtle Sim, and then wrote my own Python code to make it go in a circle. And now I'm starting to expand it so that I could have it kind of start out in one direction and then put a safety zone of 10% around the outside. And that when it enters the safety zone, it'll slow to 20% speed and then randomly pick another direction to go. But I was trying to find what object to get the size of the canvas, and I can't seem to find that. So for the time being, I'm just going to hard code what the dimensions are of the canvas and then figure the rest of it out later. Other plans, I still haven't tried getting VNC server started. Didn't do anything with the breadboards or the ITSE. And then I still need to get back then to working with the Raspberry Pi and getting ROS working there.
Well, don't hold out on us, man. Let us see that code.
What?
I said, don't hold out on us. Let us see that code. Did you have to subscribe to? Did you have to subscribe or publish to a topic? You must have.
No, I did to an existing topic, the Turtle One CMD vel, so that it's sending it to the same place it would normally go. And I'm listening to the pose
That's
from Turtle
awesome.
One. But unfortunately, I don't have Zoom on that machine yet. So
You're
maybe
on
that's
your-
something I need to add.
You're an official code slinger.
Well, I did a little bit of Python working with my Christmas light display and the Light Show Pi program. So that I can read it kinda. Coming up with it is sometimes I need examples. That's what Google is good for.
Don't we all?
But that's where I'm at. It's going to be a busy weekend outside of this, so I don't know how much I'll get done between now and next Thursday. Oh, and the other thing was I had a second interview on Monday, so I'm waiting to hear back from Marvin Windows. It'd be a remote, but they for the first couple of months they want me to spend a lot of time at one of their manufacturing plants in Tennessee. So won't be home a lot, maybe. I hand the baton to you, Al.
Good deal. Well, congratulations on the second interview. That's always a good sign. I put a couple of links. I don't know these guys, but I think I'd seen them before. People that were doing DIY laptops. So I have no background on these guys, but I put a link in there in case you want to go off the reservation with something like what they're doing.
And that hub that you put, that's it looks the same brand. It's just got more ports than the one that I had looked at.
And again, I've blown one up. Well, I haven't really blown it up. But it's been pretty durable, all in all. But I'm sure there's others out there. Let's see. In my world, I, as a reminder, have this IMU and I have wheel encoders, and the goal is to first produce an ODOM statement from those wheel encoders, and then when I have RTK fix to change the ODOM to GPS. My status at the moment is I was working with what is my current code. I don't think this is published on GitHub yet. It'll be the next time that I cycle through that. But the darn, well, I wasn't necessarily happy with. Let's see if I can find the old code. There's code that will like create your pose. Oh, well, no, is this orientation? That orientation of using bottom line is this isn't the actual code, but
If you're wanting
I
to
was
share it,
struggling
you're
with
not.
trying to. I'm sorry.
If you were wanting to show us, you're not sharing.
Oh, well, that saved you the torture then. This is the most recent code that I've been working with, and calculating the X and Y position based on the distance times, respectively cosine and sine for X and Y. I mean, that seems to be, that math is working fine. I was struggling with getting the orientation reasonable from the wheels. And so I decided that I would start to spend more time on the IMU, which heretofore I had not really integrated any data from the IMU. So spent time putzing around with the IMU, and good news, bad news. Good news is I've got something that, will, with a fair degree of accuracy, I think, publish the heading. And also I spent time calculating what's referred to as the angular velocity on the z-axis, or basically how fast is it turning. To get that to work, I had to cover a couple of different rollover situations on the heading, and that was fun math trying to figure that out. I'm sure Jeff could have done that in his sleep, but me, it takes a week. So now my status is to take what I've learned using the IMU orientation and angular velocity and put that back in here. So my orientation, which comes from a quaternion, and I have to use, that function to generate a quaternion from the yaw and X and Y. Effectively, what I've done is combining data from the wheel and data from the IMU to produce my pose statement and my transform statement. So that's what I've been working on. I'm ready to get back in the yard and test, and as is often the case when I talk to you guys, it's raining, and so I'm not gonna wait for that to dry up a little bit. Let's see what else. Anything else? Oh yeah, one of the sort of things that I discovered is in the chip robotics IMU, which is based on the Bosch, this Bosch BNO 80. For some reason, chip robotics decided to ignore the angular velocity, and I was struggling a little bit because I had to go back through their code and figure out what they were leaving on and passing through and whatnot. So it's all good software development work, but that's where I'm at. Still working on that combined odom thing. That's it for me. Oh, and just for chuckles, I ordered 2 black pills just to try to be like the cool kids. I think they were $10. It was $10.
One more point on those. If the problem with the black pill now, it's nice because being the Cortex M4, it's got a built-in bootloader that you can't destroy. It's built right into the chip. But in order to use it, you have to either move a jumper or flip a switch or hold a push button and reset it, and it goes into that bootloader mode. So that goes against your concept of not having to tear the robot apart to program it because you have to do all this monkeying around. But I'm thinking that the bootloader for the blue pill board with just a slight modification will probably load on the black pill board. So then again, it will work just like, say, an Arduino Nano at that point. But I haven't dug far enough. If you look at the official site where this stuff is published, they say here's a version for the F103 on the blue pill, or here's the version for the F407 on the big processors. But the one in between, the F401, do you recall, is yours the F401 or the F411 that you ordered?
Hey man, I went for the Gusto. I saw bigger numbers, so I went for the F411.
Okay. And also keep in mind all these different boards, they have slightly different pinouts on all these different boards too. They're close, but don't assume you can unplug one and plug the other one in, without going to look at to see where they put the pins on the board. So
Yeah, I think
okay,
this
see,
may have been the one that I got.
and see that one's got push buttons on it. So one of them, the one says boot 0. What you're supposed to do, you're supposed to hold down the boot 0 and then flick the reset button, and then that puts it in this DFU programming mode. And the Arduino or probably Platform IO, you just tell it you want to use DFU mode, and that should make the thing work. And you can't overwrite that bootloader because it's actually part of the processor itself. But then you have to physically do this. Anytime you want to program it, you have to go through those steps. So that's why I'm thinking if we can get that HID bootloader to load on this type of board, that would solve that problem, that you don't have to again, you don't have to tear your machine apart or physically, even just running it on the table. In order to do it, you have to go through the ritual every time. You have to push the one button, reset it, and then program the thing, and then when it's done, it should come back in normal mode. But if we had this other bootloader that would just work, and you run the risk of overwriting that or it's screwing up or something, but that would be handier than it's just handier than have to monkey with physically monkey with it every time you want to program it.
Cool.
But you do have the advantage on yours, because on mine, where's mine? Mine's got those stupid little well, anyway, we'll have a clear board. But anyway, mine's got these three little dip switches right there. They're just little tiny things that are almost impossible to deal with. So you have to flick one of those and then push the reset button right next to it in order to make it work. So that one, yours with the big push buttons on it, it's not as hard to do, but it's still something you have to do every time you go to program it, unless we can get that other bootloader figured out. It would be interesting to find out, because as I say on mine, I cannot get the blue pill or the black pill board does not work under the Arduino IDE for some reason. I can't access the timers on it, but I think the USB works, and I assume all the standard Arduino functions work on it. If you're trying to do it through the Arduino programming, what they call the core, the Arduino core. Now, since you got the 411, you would have a different Arduino core that you have to load into the IDE. So it could be that one will work as opposed to what I'm using. And I still think it's something buried in their configuration, because when people make up new boards, they'll say, "Oh, here's one called as a black pill," but there's 20 boards called a black pill. They're all different. And then on that little board that's got the bigger processor on it, that's not handy. But anyway, that one, what I was going to say on that one. So I go look at that one, and they have one they call an F407 mini, and something else. They might have a black pill 407. They got all these weird names that they make up, so you don't even know. Is it supposed to match your board in the first place? So that's just somewhat of a pain to figure that out. So when your boards show up, and if you go to the trouble to load your Arduino support for that board, I'm curious if that's going to work for you. And I guess I don't know any way to verify it. I guess no, without having an encoder handy, I don't know how we would verify that. But that's just one more thing to think about.
And
One more
then your
thing to
LoRa
waste time on.
board, do you remember where you got your LoRa board from?
Well, the one that's the all-in-one I got from Adafruit, and it's got the LoRa module and a Cortex M0 processor on it, and it's fairly expensive. It was like $35 for this board. And then when I decided that wasn't going to work because I wanted CAN, then I ended up with a Teensy 3.2, and on top of that I put a Feather adapter board, and then on top of that I put a different radio from Adafruit. So it was like a $20 radio and like a $22 processor, and then a $6 adapter board that I had to put all that stuff together. And then if I redo my remote, I'm going to take a Teensy 3.5, which again is around $20 to $22. And then I've got just a little square board that's just got the radio on that came from Adafruit. I think it was probably $20 again. So any of this stuff seems to add up as you try to do this stuff. But all of my LoRa stuff so far has come from Adafruit. Whether it's a single radio or a radio on a Feather board or the all-in-one unit, those all came from Adafruit. And I'm thinking they'll, from one brand to the other, they'll talk to each other, but I don't know that for a fact. So I pretty much just stuck to the same thing on all these.
Cool. Well, I'm set. I don't have anything else other than my frustratingly slow programming skills.
I guess I don't have anything else robot related.
Neither do I.
Okay, then I'll stop the recording.